F5BIGIP LTM configuration lab. So objective of this first lab exercise is to access web application hosted on 3 different servers. Basically same application has been hosted on all 3 different servers. IPs of course different like 10.1.1, 10.1.1.2 and 10.1.3. F5 big IP system we already licensed, provisioned, interfaces are configured, right? Already we have done in the first session. So I'm sure like you are now aware with like initial configuration part. Apart from network configuration licensing part, also there is no other configuration. So like we are going to start from the scratch from the very beginning. Objective, you understand, objective is to access web server from any external client machine, because we are going to use public IP address. All right, I do have a static public IP address, so I'll be using that. And in next lab, I'll show you how we can create a record in public DNS server, either your GoDaddy DNS server or any other ISP DNS server, right? So how you can create a record so that domain name so get resolved to public IP address. But in this lab exercise, we would perform testing with IP address. Means instead of using domain name, I will access server with the public IP address, right? But public IP address is not assigned to F5 big IP system. Even I would not be using like public IP here, like in virtual server configuration even. No, right? Firewall is already configured, interface is configured. Firewall has security rule to permit or to allow incoming HTTP requests and HTTPS. So firewall is already configured that with the security rule to permit incoming HTTP and HTTPS requests, right? Means port 80 and port 443. And you understand like HTTP runs on top of TCP. So first three-way handshake, then on top of that HTTP messages are exchanged. So firewall has already a security rule to permit port 80 and 443, and also NAT configuration. Destination NAT policy has been also already created. And I'm using Palo Alto firewall here, right? Next generation firewall. So we are going to touch firewall in this lab exercise because mainly we want to focus on F5 big IP LTM. Okay, so that's why like a firewall site configuration already done. We're not going to do that configuration, and this public IP address uh, would get resolved to private IP address 192.168.1.52, right? Configuration already done here, like on the firewall. So are we using same IP address as a virtual IP address? Means a client request uh, will first like hit to public IP address translated to virtual server IP address, and virtual server IP address is known as VIP or virtual IP. So virtual IP address are we using here 1.52, right? And virtual server, you understand, like if virtual server is not created here, then F5 big IP system is default denied device. It's very much like a firewall. So if virtual server is configured with virtual IP port number, that means request hitting like F5 big IP system to the same IP that is configured here, like in virtual server, same port, then yes, connection would be then successfully be done. Like first, of course, three-way handshake, and then another side three-way handshake. You understand, and pool member like chosen on the basis of load balancing method configured here, and again load balancing method is configured per pool basis, right? So per pool basis, load balancing method is configured. Good. And and the like F5 big IP system as a network or application load balancer, again that is configured per virtual server basis, per virtual server basis. not as a whole device. So you cannot say like my F5 big IP system is a layer 4 or layer 7 device, right? It is configured per virtual server basis. So if F5 big IP system has 4 different virtual servers, so maybe 1 or 2 servers configured to operate up to layer 4 and rest 2 servers up to layer 7. Okay. So step by step configuration. First, like creating node. Node means like to map backend server machine with just IP address, no service port. When we also include service port like 10.1.1.1 and service port, so we call it member, right? And only IP address, no service port, no service, then node. And pool, you understand, logical grouping of members, logical grouping of servers. And virtual server means front end object, a virtual server like F5 big IP system is pretending as if it is a web server. It's not, but it is pretending as if it is a server. It's kind of emulation. So that's what virtual server is. Virtual server is front end side object, right? And wherein like pool is backend pool. So pool means backend pool, and virtual server and the virtual IP means front end IP, right? And in cloud based load balancer, even we use the same term like front end IP, backend pool. So quickly, if I show you like the load balancer that we configure in, for example, in Azure load balancer, if you look at the load balancing options here, so total there are 4 load balancers here. So application gateway is very similar to the F5 big IP ASM, application security manager, similar to, right? Because mainly application gateway means like a layer 7 load balancer, and then further we can integrate WAF with it, right? And this load balancer is network load balancer layer 4. In F5, in fact, as so there is no segregation. Load balancer is load balancer. It's all about the configuration. If layer 7 profile is attached, then load balancer for that specific virtual server would become layer 7. Only the layer 4 profile, then up to layer 4. But here in F5, sorry, Microsoft Azure, yes, there are different load balancers. Layer 7, different pricing. Layer 4, different pricing, and the traffic manager is similar to your GTM or intelligent DNS, similar to, and they both are like very similar to your LTM, but layer 7 and layer 4. And front door is like CDN kind of thing, uh, content delivery network. If I also show you AWS load balancer in cloud, so again here like we have like a separate load balancer for application like up to layer 7, and for layer 4 like we have a network load balancer, and there is another load balancer that is gateway load balancer, and WAF is a separate policy here in F5 AWS in fact, right? But as such in F5 big IP, no, it's only virtual server, right? It's virtual server. So if layer 4 profile, and by default layer 4 profile is attached, means by default when we create virtual server, then that would update up to layer 4 of OSI model. But once we attach layer 7 profile like HTTP profile, that means we are giving instruction to F5 big IP LTM that any traffic heading like a specific virtual server, then do perform inspection up to layer 7, right? Layer 7 means like here HTTP. And in case if encrypted here, then with the help of additional profile, like we just configure here in F5. So first like encrypted data will get decrypted, and then deep packet inspection would be done here, right? So that's what, and even a lot of layer 7 functionality. Layer 7 functionality means like load balancing on the basis of maybe a browser used by client machine, right? So if we want to configure that, like if request coming with Firefox or Chrome, then that should be handled different way, or maybe forwarded to different pool member. Yes, that is possible, but only if your virtual server has layer 7 profile, means there is layer 7 functionality F5 big IP LTM doing inspection up to layer 7, then only we can configure load balancing based on browser, or maybe there is another feature here, cookie persistence profile, that could be possible only if your load balancer is inspecting data up to layer 7. But here, like as such, uh, straight away there is no way like whether we want layer 4 or layer 7 load balancer. Load balancer is a load balancer, LTM is LTM. It's all about configuration. And the good thing is about like we are not changing the role of load balancer itself. We are not like making LTM as a network load balancer or application load balancer. No, we are not doing that, right? It's just virtual server basis. Even the load balancing method, you must be very clear, right? Load balancing method is not configured for the whole load balancer. No, it's per pool basis. So there are four different pools, and then yes, for sure, like they all can have like different load balancing method configured. Maybe one round robin and the least connection, persistence, or predictive, or wait, or something different load balancing method. Maybe four virtual servers. So couple of virtual server operating up to layer 7, maybe another one layer 4, all possible here. Right? Too many like options available. So let me quickly configure this, because objective is to make this topology working properly. And as I mentioned, firewall already configured, so we are going to configure only F5 big IP system. And once it is successfully configured, then we would do testing from here. I'll just open a browser of like one of the client machine connected to internet, and obviously we have not created a record uh, in DNS. So instead of using domain name, I would use IP address here, right, for verification purpose. And in next lab exercise, I will show you practically how we can create DNS record, because my like objective is to make this topology working properly, and very much like similar to your real network environment, wherein like you just type domain name, right? So I want to explain the whole process, complete step like name to IP resolution, and then I'll bring here another module of F5, that is F5 big IP DNS. So first I would use public DNS server, right? And once we understood properly, then we would understand like limitations or shortcomings of a standard DNS server. I would replace with F5 big IP DNS, right? So that's my like the like way of like teaching, like I mean like just like gradually moving step by step, not like doing everything in single session. Because if you are new to this FIPKIP system, so yes, uh, this may create a lot of confusion. So that's the reason like I don't want to include everything in one session, so step by step. So next, like we would configure DNS, then we will talk about F5 big IP GTM, and then ASM, of course, right? We'll try to like do some maybe penetration testing here. Like I'll talk about a little bit about VAPT from cybersecurity domain. We'll understand like what if like there are like too many vulnerabilities on backend servers. So how we could exploit those, even if there is LTM, right? We understand LTM is in the middle of communication stream. There are two separate independent layer 4 connections terminated here. Even we can do like SSL inspection or HTTPS inspection, all true. But still, if backend servers have like vulnerabilities, so yes, can be exploited, and we will see that in action. And then after, once like we would have been like successful penetrating like your firewall and F5 big IP, reaching to the backend server, right, with the help of some tool like maybe are we using Kali Linux like for this purpose, okay? And And for further security or hardening, or rather I would say like web application security, then we would configure ASM policy. Then I'll show you with the help of ASM policy how we could prevent web attacks even if web applications are vulnerable, right? There are too many vulnerabilities, but still with the help of ASM policy or advanced WAF, we can protect. So step by step, I will introduce like F5BIP produce, right? So once like we have understand like basic functionality of LTM, then GTM, need of like deploying GTM in environment or F5BIP DNS, and then also F5BIP ASM, right? All three modules. So uh, step by step and with the use case. Good so far. So I hope you understand now like what's the objective and how we are going to proceed further. But first thing first, so first like step is make this small topology working at least with the IP address, public IP address. Alright, so let me quickly take you to F5 Big IP GUI page. On the left hand side, you can see local traffic. So navigate local traffic because in anything like related with LTM is configured under this section. DNS is for your GTM or F5 Big IP DNS, and ASM you understand like it comes under security. Security is your ASM, right? So we are not going to touch ASM and GTM at least in this section. Obviously, we will do that, of course. So local traffic, and what is step by step configuration? So step by step configuration is creating node, member, pool, and virtual server. Let's also write down like the IP address. So server one IP address is 10.1.1.1, and already web application already hosted on all three different servers, right? And no dummy website, a proper web application, proper website I have hosted on three different servers, right? Already web application hosted, IPs configured, gateway configured. Gateway is 10.1.1.100. So even we are not going to configure backend server, we do not want to waste time. So in case if you want to learn how you can like simulate same in your lab environment, maybe if you want to do lab practice, VMware orchestration or EVNG, so you can take any uh, Linux or Windows computer. In case if Linux machine, then there like you can configure Apache or Nginx or uh, Windows, then IIS, in fact, right? Or you can use any small Linux. I mean, like that would not utilize too much RAM and CPU cycle. Okay, because objective is not to configure backend servers, firewall. Of course, like we are not going to touch that in firewall section. Already we have done that, right, in Palo Alto, FortiGate, or Checkpoint, or Cisco, because I teach all four different next generation firewalls like FTD, Checkpoint, Palo Alto, and FortiGate. So in this section, mainly we are going to see F5 Big IP. So three nodes, member, pool, virtual server. Okay, all good. So node and node list, and then click here plus sign to create a node, and I can name it server 1 or node 1, and IP address IFQDN. IP address, of course, FQDN is fully qualified domain name. So in case if you want to create node object with the IP address, maybe your servers like have dynamic IP address, means IP is assigned from DHCP server, no static IP address. So you can use FQDN also, but for that, in order to use FQDN, there should be proper DNS configuration on F5 IP system, because FQDN means fully qualified domain name, and they would get resort to IP address. And the ratio, connection limit, connection rate limit, yes, they are used in load balancing methods. So whenever we use load balancing method per node basis, then yes, uh, ratio, connection limit, and rate limit, they all are taken into consideration. However, zero means like unlimited, infinite, as there is no limit. And ratio one means what? If there are three servers, and if we go with the default load balancing method in F5BIGIP LTM, right? So they will be weighted round robin, and weighted round robin means like default ratio is 1 1 1. So 1:1:1, and default load balancing method per pool basis is round robin. So one request and the 1:1:1, right? So if you want to change ratio, yes, you can do that. It's very much part of the load balancing method. We're not going to cover that for now. And health monitors, yes, required. So if you can select node default, node specific. Let's say just I want IP reachability health monitor. ICMP is what? IP reachability health monitor. IP reachability health monitor. So echo request and echo reply messages will be exchanged, right? Between F5BIG system your and backend server. So back and forth in every configured interval, right? Echo request and echo reply, echo request, echo reply, echo request, echo reply, right? ICMP messages, internet control message protocol. So ICMP health check means like network reachability check ensures only reachability uh, of like backend servers, not service availability, right? For that, like there is another health check, service health check. But for now, like I'm good with this ICMP, and I want to use like the default one. Even we can create our own monitor, health monitor. And now, if you want to be on the same page, like the new node page, right? So don't hit like this finished. Just click repeat, so you don't have to start all over again. Repeat means like still we are in the same page, and ICMP health check monitor already configured. Only the IP address, because IP address of course unique and ratio connection limit all same, and then the third server, third node, that is server 3 and 1.1.3, and now finished because three servers only, server 1, 2, and 3. And you can see here like they all are not reachable, right? And why? Like server 1, server 2, server 3. So what I can see here, not reachable. So offline enabled, no successful responses received, not known, not known. So let me fix this issue. And what is problem basically? So first is like problem is with Windows Firewall is by default enable. I'm using Windows machines, and Windows Firewall, of course, doesn't allow or permit ICMP packet. Okay, so because of that reason, and that's the beauty of like Health Monitor, because now still if I do a refresh here and see here, all three servers not available offline. However, they're not offline; they are online. But why is showing offline? Just because of the reason that backend servers not responding to echo request messages, ICMP messages, right? So let me quickly turn off Windows Firewall on all three different server machines. Firewall, Windows Firewall, and yes, Firewall is enabled. Turn off for now. When we can create exception rule there, but no problem whatsoever. So what is status now? I have just turned off firewall of server 1, and you can see here server 1 is now up and running, reachable, right? So it was just because of uh, Windows firewall. So I'm going to do the same for rest of two servers, server 2 and server 3, very quick, right? All right, so all three servers reachable. So first step successfully we have finished, right? We have created three different nodes. No service port, only IP address. Next step, create pool. So whenever we create pool, so there like we find option to add pool members. So basically at that time we add nodes along with service port. So node along with service port becomes member. And the last step is creating virtual server. But once you have understood properly, right? So no need to go step by step. Even directly you can straight away you can go to virtual server, create virtual server. If pool is not created, then you will find option to create new pool. Member not created, node not created, you will find option there to create new node. So even you can go in reverse order also, right? But being the very first lab exercise, like better like if we go step by step. So step by step is we are going to create pool now, and at that time only like we would find option to add node as a pool member. So in order to create new pool, navigate to local traffic and local traffic pool, and then create new pool from here. Create, give a name, http pool or my pool. And again here like we have the option of like selecting health monitor. For now like you can select like TCP, or better if you select TCP half open or HTTP even. So it's a service check health monitor. We can talk later on about different health monitors available. For now you can associate any health monitor. And service health monitor, you understand like service is checked. So either we can go with TCP or maybe TCP half of, and only two messages are then exchanged. All right, so and even I'm not going to change load balancing method for now, but you can play around like different load balancing methods, and you can look at the list available here. So in detail like uh, discussion about load balancing and PGA priority group activation, you would understand everything. For now, like just accept all default selection over here if you do not want to really change any option. And now we have option to add new member here. So new node, no, already we have created node. So select node list here, right? So node list, node is already created. You can select the service port or you can select service from the list. Either way, then server 2 add and server 3 add. Again here like if you look at option, then there's priority value here 000 by default configured. For like priority is taken into consideration when we enable this PGR priority group activation method. So once we have done with it, pool is successfully created. So very soon we are going to see like green color. Wait, yes, turned green means like uh, all the three backend servers listening on port 80, right? Because we have configured service health check monitor. So they all are listening on port 80, all three backend servers. So not only IPs are reachable, even service is also available, accessible means like they would accept incoming requests or requests hitting on port 80 HTTP request basically. All right, and the last option is creating virtual server. Just quickly I want to just show you, this is my first virtual server. And description, if you want to give source address, even if I do not select any source address, and really I don't know like from which source client request would be coming from. So by default is 000/0 means any source address, so no need to specify anything. Destination IP is what your virtual IP is. So in this case virtual IP, uh, I'm using here 1.52, 1.52, right? Because firewall will translate public IP address to this VIP or virtual IP address. So Destination IP address is basically virtual IP address, right? So destination IP address is virtual IP address or VIP. Source address is any destination, and what about the service port? So HTTP. And if I do not select any additional profile onto this page, so you see here like layer 4 profile is attached or associated with the virtual server, means only layer 4 inspection, network load balancer, no like layer 7 load balancer if you do not associate HTTP profile. And I'm going to do that. No SSL profile and whole bunch of profiles you see here, right? A lot of profiles. So uh, we use like SSL client server, one connect profile, compression, and TCP, HTTP, and other profiles. Most of the time, we just go with the default one, right? So we do not play around like all the profiles, in fact. But yes, like 4 or 5 profiles are really very important here. VLAN and source address translation by default not enable. I'm not going to touch anything here, right? Session profile, and also another important point I must mention here, not required to, but you should be aware with, you should be familiar with, that there are two different configuration mode, basic and advanced. So when we change the mode from basic to advanced, then we find more options to play around, right? More options. And these are some new features in F5BIGIP 17. As such, no prominent substantial changes have been done to version 17 in terms of LTM. Hardly, like there are some encryption algos and MQTT, and there are some of the changes in different profiles. They have brought like a lot of other profiles to this virtual server properties page, but as such, no very major change in fact. So if whether you are working on version 13, 14, 15, 17, from LTM perspective at least, no big deal. All right, so what next we want to do here? So source address translation not enable, and look at these two options. So basically I changed the mode just to show you that port translation and address translation both are enabled. So by default, destination port, destination address both are translated, not the source address. You can see here source address translation is none, but destination IP and destination port, they both are translated by default. Yes, we can configure source address translation also if required, depends like what topology you have. And further at the bottom we find the option to associate the pool, right? So last step is what? Final step is pool. HTTP pool need to be associated with virtual server. And why we are going to do that, let me quickly talk about the packet flow real quick. So what happens here, like client requests, where I have the space, client request first hits virtual server, right? And if there is virtual server configured to listen on the same port, like wherein like request is coming in and the same IP, like the virtual IP, then yes. And if I assume like there is no other condition like to discard or reject the client request, then yes, handled with the virtual server and then forwarded to pool, HTTP pool here, right? This one. And now pool has three members. Member 1 means server 1, server 2, server 3. So based on load balancing method configured, availability of backend server, decision is taken, right? So client request is then directed to one of the selected pool members. So pool member is chosen on the basis of load balancing method configured, and as I mentioned before, load balancing method is configured per pool basis, and profiles are attached or associated to virtual server. What are profiles? Profiles basically decide how like requests would be processed, how like traffic would be handled, processed, like whether layer 4 inspection, layer 7 decryption, not decryption. So decide it on the basis of attach or associate profiles. So profiles are associated with the virtual server load balancing method configured per pool basis. Okay, so that's the reason like virtual server definitely should have a default pool, or if you have like advanced knowledge, you know, like I rule in F5 big IP. So even instead of like aesthetic mapping or default pool association, we can go ahead and we can create I rule. I rule can be associated or attached with the virtual server, and pool is then selected on the basis of the rule. Rule is something like a kind of TCL script, right? Tools command line language. It's kind of a script, in fact. No need to understand everything in the first session. So let me quickly come back here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to associate HTTP pool with the virtual server, because I don't want to use any I rule here. So default pool is associated. So what I have done on this page, so if let me show you one more time. So uh, a name is given here, type is default standard, but there are different types here. Source address blank means like any 000/0. Destination IP is like your virtual IP address, yes, required. Port number required, right? And then finally, uh, pool pool is at the bottom here. Pool is attached with the virtual server, and hit down finish. Done, right? Configuration is done now. We can do verification now. Okay, so node and member created, added to pool, virtual server created, pool is attached to the virtual server, firewall already configured, routing already configured, network already configured. So now we can perform like testing, right, from any external machine, computer connected to the internet, right? Let's do that. See here, successfully done, and with HTTP only, because it's not HTTPS. And also I have changed the page here, so you can see is request like hit server one, right? So it's a web page or website hosted on backend server. Okay, so round robin is the default load balancing method. Server 1 accessible. We can also use curl command for the testing purpose. Curl is by default, curl command is not available on Windows machine, but if you want, then you can configure, because curl is basically Linux, or command is available on F5BIGIP system also. You can also do verification from here, and you can go to stat local traffic, and I can select here pools, HTTP pool, and you can see here like is connections showing here 433, server 1, server 2, server 3, and HTTP request column you see here 0. Why 0? Because there is no layer 7 inspection, right? There is no layer 7 inspection, only layer 4. So virtual server means layer 4 virtual server. Why? Because there is no layer 7 profile associated with it. Okay, so we can verify from here, like it's very much like the load, like round robin kind of thing, 4:3:3:3:3. Okay, so even I have a curl command installed on my laptop, so I can do testing with that also, instead of like using browser. Even I can use curl command. So I generated request with curl command, right? And you can see here like more traffic hitting like 20 20 20, because 60 requests almost, and distributed equally 20 20 20, right? From here, like 30, and again, if I hit 30 more, so to refresh. And however, like HTTP connections are very short-lived connections, right? HTTP connections are very short-lived connections. So now you can see here count is increased almost 100, 98, almost 33, 33, 30. It's very much like 1 is to 1 is to 1, right? Weighted round robin. And also like we refresh the page, then here like I can see server 2, maybe third, like server 3, because there are three servers. There are three servers and hosted with the same application. Just to identify like the server name, I have just changed the name like server 1, server 2, and server 3. So now we can change load balancing method, we can do some advanced configuration, we can create and attach profiles with it. We can also check the connection table from CLI also, right, from TMSH, so syscon. So as I mentioned, like there are two separate connections, right? Layer 4 connection. So you can do that verification from CLI. There are too many CLI commands available in F5BIGIP LTM, and really like those commands are also very very important, very very helpful. So you can check those commands also if in case if you want, because in my troubleshooting course also. So complete course like that I have prepared, like so here like you'll find troubleshooting F5 big IP. So there is one dedicated uh, course for that, like just for the troubleshooting purpose. So you will find here a lot of use cases, right? So mainly like TCP reset is one of the common issue here, or maybe SSL handshake, certificate related issues, very common. So that's very much like your day-to-day job activities, like how to generate CSR, certificate renewal, right? And clustering, yes, clustering related issues, again very popular, very common. I mean, so DSA related issues, in fact, config sync like devices like not synchronizing configuration properly. Software upgrade is another very very important troubleshooting ticket here I have mentioned in this, and I have practically demonstrated that also, that how you can do like software upgrade in production environment without like asking for any like maintenance window from the client. So you can do that also. So for troubleshooting, even you can refer this, like you can buy or like this like from my website netcloud.com in case if you are interested in. But basic concept at least I hope you understand how you can make this configuration working, right? So that's all about F5 big IP LTM basic configuration. And in next session, like uh, I will show you how we can access a web server with the domain name, not with the IP, because I want to make this topology very much like real world scenario. And then also like we'll understand limitation of standard DNS. Standard DNS means like the DNS that we use of hosting provider, registrar DNS, or maybe ASP DNS, local DNS server, Linux or Windows based DNS server. So we will understand like uh, limitations. So uh, then what if like we replace this DNS server with another F5 big IP box, but this time around F5 big IP software blade is DNS, right? So what benefits we would have if we replace public DNS or any DNS with F5 big IP DNS? And another important point to understand here, how we could um, make that happen. I mean, like if a client is sitting anywhere, like in any country, anywhere in any region, so how we could forward like client request to a 5 big IP DNS for name to IP translation? Because if domain is registered with one of the registrar like GoDaddy or something, so obviously we would have to do some config change there also. right? Because objective is to send client requests to F5 big IP DNS for the intelligent name to IP translation, secure DNS resolution or translation, or maybe to speed up name to IP translation, that is accelerated DNS resolution, because these are three main benefits of F5 big IP DNS. So what we will do, like we will, take another big IP virtual system, and we would provision F5 big IP DNS, and for resolution purpose we would be using that. And then here, as I mentioned in the beginning, like I would be using ASM policy also. ASM policy, right? To, like, because web application hosted on the backend servers, if they have like vulnerabilities, then obviously, like, in order to protect a web application from different attacks or WASP top 10, this would be proper web application firewall. So I'll critically demonstrate that also, right?